Hi there, welcome back to another episode of The Art of Business English. It's episode 83 today. Well, basically today I'm going to be continuing with my theme of prepositions, okay? Prepositions after verbs, because I wanted to focus today on verbs of saying and thinking. So if you don't know what verbs of saying and thinking are, don't worry, they're super common. You probably know them all already. However, what we need to be careful of is obviously the correct preposition after them. That's where we run into problems. So typically speakers place the wrong preposition. So just to give you an example, in Spanish we say estoy pensando en. That's obviously not correct, okay? Because what Spanish speakers do is they will say, I am thinking in. They'll do a direct translation, and obviously if you know a bit of English, you'll obviously know that the only preposition that can come after think is to think about or to think of. So little things like that can cause problems. So in today's episode I'll be addressing some of these issues, and we'll be looking at the prepositions that can come after verbs of saying and thinking. As always, I've divided this episode into 3 parts. So firstly, I'll be looking at some common verbs for saying and thinking. Then you will learn the secrets to understanding the correct preposition that follows them. And finally, I'll give you some examples. Okay, so let's jump in. Okay, so let's start with a list of common verbs for saying and thinking and their translation. So the first one is to complain. Now, complain is quejarse. The next one is to say something, okay, which is important because something is important here. Decir algo. Now, what actually happens here is people get confused. They say to. We can't say to someone. We say something to someone. So don't get confused and put the preposition to after say. You can put the preposition after say, but only in the simple past. Okay, so in the present, you say, look, I'm going to say this to you only once. Okay, so this is the thing. But you could say in the past, I said to him not to arrive late. So you need to be careful because it can be a bit tricky. But in the present, we say something to someone. Okay, the next verb is think, and think is pensar. The next one is to know, and obviously know is saber. Leading on from that one, the next verb is to learn, and obviously to learn is aprender. The next one is to talk, and talk is hablar. The next verb of thinking and saying is to warn. Now, to warn is avisar, okay? So, warn someone about something. To wonder is the next one, and to wonder is preguntarse. Okay, so I'm wondering about something. The next one is to write, and to write is obviously escribir. So, as I said, these verbs are not difficult. They're pretty straightforward. Okay, verbs of saying and thinking. We just need to make sure we get the right preposition. You can also write to, so that write about or write to. The next one is to apologize, and that is disculparse, okay? So apologize has a couple of prepositions that can come after it, depends on what you're trying to say. Go into that in a bit more detail later. The next one is to explain, and obviously explain is explicar. And the following one is to present, and present is presentar. Finally, the last one is to speak. So you've got to speak to, and you've got to speak about. Anyway, we're going to look at the prepositions now. So those are basically verbs of thinking and saying. And now in the second part, I'm going to explain to you basically the common prepositions. You have seen some of them just now if you're watching the video. If you're listening to the podcast, then don't worry, I'm going to explain them now. So what are the common prepositions that follow verbs of saying and thinking? Well, the most common prepositions, or the most common preposition is about, And we use about after these verbs of saying and thinking when we want to talk about or indicate the topic. So, I'm going to talk about this. So about is used when we want to indicate the topic. Let me demonstrate with an example. Basically, I would like to complain about the service we received in your restaurant. So the topic here is the service. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. You're going to complain about the service. In this case, as I said, the topic is the service. But let's look at the next preposition, and that is to, and we often use the preposition to after verbs of saying and thinking when we want to put or to show that it's direct speech. So the structure is the verb of saying and thinking plus to plus a person. So a person, him or her or Jim. In this case, we put to demonstrate that we are creating direct speech. We're talking to someone, all right? So we're not talking about a topic, we're talking to the person. So that's super important. Again, let me demonstrate with an example. I would like to speak to your manager. Okay, so the person here is the manager. And in this example, we've used the preposition to, and then we followed this with the person, the manager. And here the speech is direct, and that is why we also say, I would like to speak to you about something. Okay, so it's important to say speak to. Now, the problem is in Spanish, we say hablar con, okay, which is often translated by people to speak with. I want to speak with you. Personally, speak with is not wrong in some situations, but speak to works in all situations. So I encourage you to say speak to and not speak with. So let's summarize. We use verbs of saying and thinking with the preposition about and to, all right? And we can sometimes use the same verb with both prepositions. For example, speak about something or speak to someone. It depends on if it's a topic-based thing or if it's a person direct speech, okay? So just quickly, before I finish this section, I'd like to point out that there are some verbs that are not followed by a preposition. So these are verbs of saying and thinking. So let's consider the following verbs. You've got discuss, which means hablar o tratar. Discuss is not discutir. Discutir is to argue. So, and in this case, argue is a verb of thinking and saying, and it's followed by what? A preposition. Yes, surprise. It's followed by the preposition about. So to argue about something. All right, so discuss is hablar o tratar. Okay. Debate is another verb that's not followed by a preposition. It's debatir. And consider is another one, which means considerar or tener en cuenta. So, these are not followed by prepositions directly. And mention, which is mencionar. So just be careful. Don't put prepositions after these verbs of saying and thinking, okay? All right. So let's look at the next part of the episode. Here I'm going to give you some example sentences. And make sure you listen to the pronunciation, okay? Because last week in episode 82, we looked at the pronunciation of the prepositions after verbs. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to take a look or have a listen to it if you listen to the podcast. Now I'm going to give you some example sentences. Listen to the pronunciation of the preposition, because here you'll notice that most of them have a weak form. Okay, so number one. Does anyone care about the fate of this project, or should we just abandon it? So, care about. Number two, the fact that customers are complaining about the same thing means that we need to review this aspect of our customer service. So, customers are complaining about. Again, it's quite soft. Okay. Number three, I'm not sure if you knew about the recent changes to the government legislation and how it will affect the company moving forward. So I'm not sure if you knew about the recent changes to government legislation and how it will affect the company moving forward. So that is know about. Next one. Chris said he would like to spend some time working in our department so he can learn about how we do things here. So learn about. All right. So that's the pronunciation of the preposition about is using the neutral form, the schwa, about. Next one. Did the boss say anything to you about the upcoming conference in Barcelona? So to you about. Again, we're using lots of linking. And the last one, I've been thinking about what you said and I think I found a solution. So I've been thinking about what you said and I think I found a solution. So thinking about. Okay. So there are some example sentences with the preposition about, and obviously they're followed by the topic. Now, let's cover some example sentences with the preposition to, followed by the person, and this is, of course, used to indicate direct speech. So, I think you should apologize to Jim. He seems pretty upset by your comments in the last meeting. So, apologize to Jim. To. This is the weak form of the preposition to. So, it's apologize to Jim. Okay, so we don't say to Jim, we say to Jim. Next one. Could you please explain the process to Maria? She's new and needs a hand. So could you please explain the process to Maria? To Maria. So again, the weak form of the to. I'll be presenting some new ideas to the board at the next board meeting. I'll be presenting some new ideas to the board at the next board meeting. Again, quite a weak form of the to. And lastly, Brian, please write to our supplier and congratulate them for the fast delivery times. So please write to our supplier and congratulate them for their fast delivery times. So again, write to our supplier. So we're really using linking here to soften. We soften the to, and it really links nicely with write to our. Okay, so that's it. That's our list of verbs for thinking and saying and the correct preposition. Make sure you remember the two main rules, which are if you're talking about the topic, you would use about, and if you're talking about or talking to someone, then you use to, which indicates direct speech. Okay, and before I go, if you do want to learn some more preposition and verb combinations, then grab a copy of the 500 Business English Collocations for Everyday Use ebook, and as I've mentioned, it includes all of the pronunciation in MP3 format. Well, final thoughts from me. Basically, just if you do want to improve your prepositions after verbs, you just need to memorize which ones go after which verbs. Be aware of the pronunciation, that's super important. And yeah, keep practicing and just listen to native people and use them in writing wherever you can, in your emails or whatever. And that's about it, really. I mean, you can just expand your vocabulary and grammar through contact with the language by listening to podcasts like The Art of Business English every week. If you do like The Art of Business English, make sure you like us. We're on YouTube. We have a video every week. I put one up. Obviously, if you can give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, that would be great. That would help spread the word. And if you are in the southern hemisphere, it's winter's coming, but if you're in the north, like us here in Spain, enjoy the summer. It's coming. I'm getting super excited. It's the last week of school. School's out for summer. So I'll be having a little bit more free time. So I'm pretty excited about that. So if you do have any questions, you do have any comments, or you would like me to prepare anything for you, then don't hesitate to give me a shout and be more than happy to put something together for you. Well, my friends, thank you very much for joining me here again for another episode of The Art of Business English. I'll see you all next week. Take care and bye for now.